Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
John, I think most people know that I am a supporter of Doug Ford. I have been. I know Doug Ford personally. But I must tell you this. I have to be very honest. Doug Ford and his advisors have made a very, very big mistake in fully opening theaters and sports arenas, but not restaurants and gyms. This is a major, major mistake. The decision to allow, let's say, 20,000 people to jam into Canadian Tire Place to see the Senators, but restrict restaurants to only 50% of capacity makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. It is nonsensical. I agree with restaurant owners who say, once again, they are being discriminated against. In fact, it's almost as if Ford and company wanted to drive restaurants out of business. I know they don't, but that certainly is the appearance that they give. This rule, Mr. Ford, has got to be changed and changed immediately, like today or tomorrow. None of the problems with nonsensical regulations like this, one of the problems is that it lowers the public's respect for all of the rules. And perhaps even more importantly, it lowers respect for all of those who make the rules. And we don't need that right now. Already, this country, we've got a very unhealthy skepticism about the methods we use to fight COVID. I mean, protesters at some of our hospitals is ample evidence of that. We certainly don't need to provide more ammunition to those who object to lockdowns, masking, and vaccines. Don't give them more ammunition, which this ruling most definitely does, Mr. Ford. You know, fact is, from day one, restaurants, at least any that I know, as far as I can see, have gone out of their way to follow all of the rules. They have spaced their tables wide apart. In many cases, they have spent extra money, and in some cases, a lot of money, building, partitions and so forth. They have hired extra staff to monitor what you're supposed to do, give addresses and all the rest of it. They have followed the rules, and I can see no evidence anywhere. I don't see any evidence. I don't see any that's been presented that in any way restaurants are a major or even a minor spreader of COVID. I see no evidence of that whatsoever. Why these rules still apply, and the same situation applies to gyms. Gyms have gone out of their way to follow all of the rules. It just makes no sense. I mean, here we are. I can go to the Senators opening game. There'll be 20,000 people in there. Now, they're supposed to all be masked, but we know that many will not. They're supposed to all have double vaccinations, which in all probability they will. But the same thing holds true with restaurants. All of the people going into a restaurant now must be fully vaccinated. So here I am at the Senators game, shoulder to shoulder. I mean, literally rubbing shoulders with people right of me, left of me, front of me, behind me. 20,000. That's okay. I can go into a movie theater, once again, right to me, left to me, front of me, behind me, almost rubbing shoulders, no problem. The theater can be absolutely jammed with strangers. And strangers at Canada Tire Place as well. But I can't go into a restaurant, which in all probability will have, if the rules are changed, will have tables at least 2, maybe 3 feet apart. It boggles the mind. Now, I know that Doug Ford is following the advice of the health authorities. There's no sense to it. There's no sense whatsoever. And as I say, one of the great dangers is that when you see nonsensical rules like this, or lack thereof, it it causes people to sort of shake their heads to create skepticism. Already we have far too much skepticism. It's one of the skepticism is one of the reasons that we still have as many people who are unvaccinated and thus spreading the disease as we have. All this does is, you know what, this kind of a ruling, it convinces some people that those people making the rules just don't know what the hell they're doing. And in fact, when you look at this, you really have to ask, I mean, do these people making these rules really know what they're doing? How can it be okay to jam into Canadian Tire Place or a movie theater, strangers to the right, to the left, in front and behind, rubbing shoulders? That's okay. But I can't go into a restaurant, sit down at a table with another table 2 or 3 feet away. Folks, I'm sorry. It makes no sense. As I say, this is the kind of skepticism. It's the last thing we read that we need right now. What we need now, we need people to buy into the rules and regulations, to agree with them, to adhere to them. The last thing we need is more people just shaking their heads in disbelief. Mr. Ford, admit you were wrong, sir. It's not the first time. You're a big man. You can admit that you made a mistake, because you have. Admit you've made a mistake. Change the rules. Either tell the theaters and the sports arenas that they cannot have full capacity, or tell or tell the restaurants that they can have the same rules that apply. And I mean, let's face it, the same rules as Costco and Walmart and so forth have had for more than a year now. Treat everybody fairly. For people to buy into rules and regulations, they must be fair, they must be reasonable. They must appear to be fair, and they must appear to be reasonable. And this rule concerning restaurants and gyms does not appear, nor is it fair, and it sure as hell isn't reasonable. Mr. Ford, do the right thing, sir. Change the rules immediately. We don't need more restaurants going under. They have already sacrificed enough. Let them do their business. Nobody, I don't think, has done a better job in adhering to the rules and protecting and creating safe environments than our restaurants. Reward them. Don't punish them anymore, sir. Any response so far, John?
Absolutely. Joshua is first up. He says, so Leafs, Raptors, Senators, etc. can operate under full capacity. But just as one example, a small local wrestling event in Ottawa that might need the money to survive is under restriction. But that couldn't have
No,
anything to
actually,
do.
the rest. No, he wrote that several days ago. As you know, well, it depends on where it is, I guess. If they have the wrestling match at Canadian Tire Place, then they can have full capacity. So that isn't quite true. Go ahead.
Lori says, you're so right, Lowell. I can see what's ahead for us. No sense at all. Poor restaurants. Peter, nice to hear from you. He says he would sooner have people eating on the patios. It's not right to make restaurants remain partly open. His advisors are clueless. They don't live in reality. Some of the same advisors, no doubt, worked on O'Toole's election team. Julie is on Twitch. She runs a dance studio locally. She says, yes, we can't have full dance classes because of regulations, but it's okay to sell out a Sens or Red Blacks game. Makes no sense to her. Chrissy says, I'm curious. Opening these big venues means more staffing. If the restaurants are struggling to find the staff to work, how are those bigger venues going to handle that, finding workers? Terry says, can't figure out the reasoning behind this decision either. It just doesn't make sense. Craig is in with a couple of comments, including they still apply to small businesses as well. Craig, that's out of context just because we've sort of moved on from when you posted that. I apologize. Glenn says the current rules are bullshit. No sense whatsoever. I'm not sure if it's Stefan or Stephen. Why are the provinces with the worst results when it comes to COVID represented by conservative governments? He asks. You want in on that?
Hold it. That's not true. As a matter of fact, I mean, let's give Ontario credit. Today in Canada, Ontario has the best record when it comes to hospitalizations and when it comes to deaths. I'm talking about on a per capita basis. Excuse me, put in a different context, Ontario today is the safest of all of the provinces. We have a better record than any other province when it comes to hospitalizations and deaths. So until now, even though many of us were very skeptical about some of the rules and regulations. The fact of the matter is that it has created, I quote, the safest environment, certainly from COVID, in all of Canada. So for someone to suggest that only those provinces with conservative government, that's nonsense. The one province with the best record is run by Doug Ford and his conservative government. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, you liberal. Go ahead, John. Sometimes people are just nuts, and I mean, go ahead.
Peter says they made the change last Friday afternoon to almost no notice to the general public. Murray says just comply, and wonder why. Kathy says, and not only that, Lowell, 2/3 of government employees are exempt from vaccine mandates. Nothing makes sense concerning COVID.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. So here we go again. Our esteemed, beloved Prime Minister, now serving his third term, thanks to the majority of Canadians, told us unequivocally that all public servants were going to have to be vaccinated. And in fact, this was, I believe, one of his apparent strong stance regarding vaccines, I think, was one of the reasons that he did win the last election. He portrayed O'Toole as being soft on vaccines. So guess what, folks? This business of all public servants are going to have to be vaccinated? No, about 200,000 of them, which is, what, about 2/3 of them? I don't know. They don't have to be vaccinated. Military doesn't have to be vaccinated. Postal workers don't have to be vaccinated. I could go on and on and on. About 200, they finally admitted, about 200,000 federal public servants will not have to be fully vaccinated. So once again, misled, dare I suggest lied to, by our Prime Minister. Beautiful. Go ahead, John.
Are the members of the House of Commons not public servants? Do they have to be vaccinated too? Do we know that?
No, they don't.
Because that keeps coming up. People keep saying,
Yep.
All right. Let me see. To the phone, 613-413-2217. Lowell, why do our leaders, why are they so misled by their so-called experts and depend on their advice rather than their own common sense?
Well, wait a minute. Hold it. I mean, in this case, I think that his advisors are very, very wrong. But I mean, if you're not going to believe you have these highly priced, well-educated, highly trained health experts, I mean, if you're not going to believe them, then don't hire them. If these decisions should be made from a political point of view rather than a health point of view, then just fire all of the health experts, including all the doctors and scientists. That comment, with due respect, makes no sense whatsoever. Of course, you've got to listen to your advisors. Now, on the other hand, you also, you very clearly, I think in this case, they've all made a mistake. I think there's no doubt about it. Whether they and one of the things that concerns me is that I have not seen what I would call a reasonable explanation for saying that we're fully open in our theaters, sports arenas, but not in our restaurants. I have not seen a rational explanation for this. Maybe there is a rational explanation. I don't know. I sure as hell haven't heard it. Go ahead, John.
But I think you're right. The lack of an explanation is what makes it frustrating.
Yeah.
Lana says, the only thing I liked about movie theaters was going when it was dead and basically empty. I'd rather watch movies at home now, she says.
Peter, you know what? Can I hold it?
Yeah,
Come on. You can give me a better comment than that. I mean, isn't that just a little bit selfish? You were happy when nobody could go. Come on. You're a better person than that. Go ahead, John.
Just foolish. Don't make any sense, says Clifford. Kevin is on Facebook. Now you understand why people waited for the jabs. Zero trust. Another comment from Craig. I'd sooner go to just about any restaurant than a sporting venue, a theater, or the National Arts Center. Terry, haven't heard from you yet. He says some people still not vaccinated. It's like that scene from the movie The Treasure or the Sierra Madre when the bandits say, we don't need no stinking vaxes. Thank you, Terry. And I totally agree with what you're saying. There's no logic to all this. The bigger venues are much more risky, and restaurants have lost enough money already. It's time to set them free. Kathy says call centers don't have to be vaccinated. And Craig, correction, the majority of Canadians voted other than for Justin Trudeau.
Okay, yeah, but you know what? You're still in all, they won the majority of seats. Okay,
I knew what you meant.
Yeah. I have another issue here. Oh, but before we do that, I want to get a word in here for our good friends at Shields. Once again, I want to point out because very often people will shop, even whether it's appliances or whatever, they'll go to a big box store because they assume that the prices are better. I've done a little comparing. You might be very surprised to find out that in a number of appliances, certainly the list price, you'll get a better deal at Shields than you will for many of these appliances at the big box stores. And you'll see this yourself. If you go to shields.ca, you will see appliances there. You can see the prices, you can see the savings, you can see some of the other advantages. And if you compare that with the price, for example, at a big box store, you may be very surprised. Pakenham is just a small little place. Their cost of operation is lower. They're very high volume. Make no mistake about that. And of course, the other nice thing is that they've got almost all of these appliances that you could possibly want in storage, which means they can have it in your home in 2 or 3 days. Shields.ca, folks. Don't buy the argument, at least without checking, that you can save money at big box stores. In many cases, you'll do better at Shields. Thank you, John. More comments there?
Just a couple trickling in. Murray says there are no critical thinkers left in the world. Quit listening to the mainstream media, he says, and find out what is actually happening around the world.
Yeah, excuse me. This is so nonsensical. Where would you suggest that we get our information? From Facebook? From some nondescript posting from some nondescript, probably lying person? Where, if we're not going to rely on the mainstream media, what I do in order to, as far as I am concerned, getting the true picture is don't rely on. I agree. Don't rely on just one. Don't rely on the CBC. Don't rely on CTV. But examine several different sources, and if you do that, you'll probably get the truth or very close to it. And you can also throw in a little bit of common sense sometimes too. John, go ahead.
Steven says he gets his facts from you. We have a text here, 613.
That's a good. I'm a good source here. I'm a good source. Absolutely.
I know you're very well researched and very well read. I'm
going to ask people out there. Excuse me. You will be hard pressed to go back in my history, and as far as my opinions, comments concerning events, you will be hard pressed to find out where I made a mistake. I was right about green energy. I was right about Kathleen Wynne. I was right about Dalton McGuinty. I could go on and list a number of other things as well. I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes. We have all made mistakes, but I'm very, very careful. I examine as many different sources as I can get. And on more than one occasion, I have actually phoned people to find out, did you really say that? And if you did you really mean that? So go ahead, John. Sorry.
Follow up from Murray regarding mainstream media. He says, why would you listen to them when they're bought and paid for by the Liberal government?
Not them all. Not them all. I'm going to tell you, Brian Lilly is not paid for by the government. I'm not paid for by the government. John Milkey's not paid for by the government. I'm sure we'd all be glad to take money from the government, but
hell yeah. I've certainly given them my share.
Yeah, I just like a little bit of my money back, right?
Please, that's all I ask. Chrissy, go ahead, Lowell.
No, I was just going to say I have another topic here. We're running always with a little short of time.
Okay.
As I guess you might expect, there is growing opposition to the idea of holding a judicial inquiry into the light rail disaster. Mayor Watson doesn't want such an inquiry, and you can understand why. And as you know, the majority of council are a bunch of bobbleheads. Whatever Jimmy wants, Jimmy gets from the majority of his council. The Ottawa Citizen has what I would call a totally gutless editorial. They say, the public needs to know what's going on, but they will not come right out and say the only way we're going to get this is through a judicial inquiry. The mayor and his bobbleheads, they think that the city should examine this. So essentially what Jim Watson is saying here, and others, is that the city should investigate the city. Well, come on. I mean, we all know the result of that, right? I mean, if this is going to be a non-judicial inquiry, more or less an in-house inquiry, this is like the police investigating the police. Doesn't work. If the city investigates itself, we'll never get the truth. not the whole truth. And even if somebody in that inquiry did get the truth and it was embarrassing to the government, to Jim Watson, we would never learn it. The only way we are ever going to get the truth, the whole truth here, certainly a good chunk of it, will be through a totally, totally, totally independent judicial inquiry with legal right to summon witnesses, and those witnesses must appear on with oath, etc., etc. That's the only way we're ever going to get this. And you know, a lot of the opposition, they keep, oh, it could cost a lot of money. Yeah. And some, I see some story, well, it could cost up to $20 million. That's probably not true. But you know what? Even if it was, it's a tiny fraction. We're talking over $6-7 billion to this point for light rail. And even if we did have to spend $20 million, which I doubt we ever would, it would still be a tiny portion. But city councilors make me kind of laugh when they talk about, oh, we've got to protect the taxpayer's dollar. Come on. I mean, this is the city council, for God's sake, that pours money out for. Let me give you an example. Do you know that there are 365 city hall employees who get free parking?
What?
And the rest of if you don't drive a car, I'm not finished yet. If you don't drive a car, you get free transit. That's bad enough. So this is really protecting the taxpayer's dollar. But get this, folks. Several years ago, it was decided that free parking and free transit was a taxable benefit. Oh my God. The union and others were, wait a minute, you're going to make us pay taxes on our free parking? We can't have that. So guess what happened? City Council voted an extra $150,000 to compensate the employees for the tax they had to pay. It's beautiful. So not only that, but we have City Hall employees who own hybrid or all-electric cars. So got this, if you're a City Hall employee, all of this at taxpayers' expense. You can go down and you can fuel up absolutely free. Well, we taxpayers got to pay for it, right? So you can fuel up your car absolutely free, and then you can go and park your car absolutely free, and the tax that you have to pay on the benefit, you'll get compensated for that. And we have city councilors saying they care about the taxpayer's dollar. My ass is a star. Come on. That's nonsense. I mean, the money that has been poured out, this whole idea that somehow or other climate change was an emergency. We have spent millions and millions and millions on that. What I am saying, with no benefit whatsoever, what I am saying is you know what? Do the taxpayers a favor. Find out what went wrong. Was there malfeasance? Was a law broken here? Is it incompetence? Is it just bad judgment? Or is it just bad luck? A full-scale judicial inquiry. I'm a taxpayer. You're a taxpayer, John. We have a right to know. And rather than give all the employees free parking and free transit and all the rest of us, charge them and take that money to pay for whatever inquiry we have. Thank you very much, John. More email coming in.
Why do I keep slugging away at this? Why don't I just apply at City Hall? Seriously, why? Anyway, Peter says,
crazy. And they claim, oh yeah, we really care about the taxpayer's dollar. Oh, come on.
Like Ken says on Twitch right now, he says taxpayers haven't given a damn about taxpayer dollars for years. Let me see, Peter, just like the city of Pembroke upped councillor/mayor's pay to cover the taxable benefits opposed to reducing the salary to begin with. Let me see. Chris, it's very quiet at restaurants, he says. Craig, all MPs are exempt from the vaccines. Not sure about their office staff, he says. Doug Ford has reversed decisions before and may do so again in favor of opening restaurants, gyms, etc. He's not above admitting and changing bad decisions, says Deborah. Mark says, methinks Jimmy is taking under the table and calls him scum. Tom says, Watson doesn't want to ruin his legacy. Sorry.
Before I go further, I don't believe that Jim Watson is a dishonest man. He has secrets that he wants to hide. Everybody does. But I can understand people believing this. And I'm going to tell you right now, if we don't have a full-scale inquiry, and if the city investigates itself, I think this just will add to the suspicion that somebody, the mayor or somebody, or maybe somebody's, did take some money under the table. I think that's one of the reasons why we need this inquiry. Let's clear the slate. Let's find out what really happened here. I don't think people. I could be wrong. I would hate to think that anybody at City Hall had taken a bribe, but something has gone wrong. And I think we deserve to know. And as I say, one of the reasons I believe this is that it will once and for all remove any shadow that may be over city councilors, or it may impose the shadow. I would hope that it would remove the shadow. John, more comments from you?
I do have a quick question of my own, if I may.
Sure.
Did the city, were they the ultimate decision makers on who to go with? Because, I mean, this is paid for by the city, by
Yep.
the province, by the feds. So ultimately the decision was the city of Ottawa.
Well, as far as I know, but I'd like that very question cleared up.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know the basis upon which these contracts were let. And I'd like to know what due diligence was done. Did they investigate these cars? Did they investigate the company that provided these cars? Did they, and I've always asked the question, why did we grant not one, but two contracts to one of the most corrupt companies that this country has ever seen, Lavalin? We know that they're corrupt. I mean, how do we know well, some of their former employees are still in jail. That to me is a pretty good indicator. So these are the questions I think that we deserve to have an answer to for a number of reasons. We need to know the truth, and we need to remove any shadow that may be on any member of city council or city staff for that matter. John?
Nobody is saying otherwise, according to the comments we're getting from text, from YouTube, from Twitch, from Facebook. Here's a text. I think it should be investigated by an outside authority like the RCMP or the OPP. Christine, good to hear from you today. Let me see. Let me just scroll up and get you there. Regarding the judicial inquiry, pardon me, if they really wanted each ward to be represented, they should bring in 10 random people from each ward to vote tomorrow instead of asking the councillors to vote to whether they should be investigated. It's a hell of an idea.
That's an idea.
Yep. Craig says, please remember it was the entire city council that voted for SNC, even though they didn't meet the minimum requirements. David says, need an inquiry on Ontario Green Energy demand at 1 p.m. Here you go, Lowell. He's doing your work for you.
Good.
15,801 megawatts, wind 2,215 megawatts, solar 204 megawatts, biofuel 32 megawatts.
Yeah, can you imagine that? I mean, this to me requires a real investigation. There are literally millions of solar panels out there that have cost us billions of dollars. But this is one of the most beautiful sunny days that we're likely ever to get. And yet, you're right. Solar producing almost nothing. Of almost 16,000 megawatts, solar producing about 200, which is less than 1%. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. We have spent billions, and every time you pay your hydro bill, your inflated hydro bill, you are contributing more to wind and solar, and we're getting almost nothing from it. I know we're not discussing that today, but I'm glad someone else is looking at this. IESO.ca, Independent Electrical System Operator. This is totally independent. The exact figures, how much electricity we're burning, and where it's coming from. John.
Comment in from Barry at 613-413-2217. Lowell, Jim Watson is another control freak liberal and is one of McGuinty's marauders who's running a dog and pony show just like Dalton McGuinty and Trudeau did. Let me see. Murray, you are not the mainstream media, and there are many that have a huge viewership that would totally agree with you. Murray's really hung up on mainstream media. Peter, wow, no one is surprised by no inquiry on LRT. Watson and his liberal councillors all need to go. SNC and connected liberals. Chris says we're stuck in wave 1 and wave 2 and 3 and 4. We'll never get out of it. This for a very king time. Thanks, Chris.
No idea what to say. The fact is, we will get out of it when everybody gets vaccinated.
Couple of last minute comments. Lori, Lowell, there are over 700 windmills on their way. Check that out. Ottawa is going to look silly. Yeah, we talked about that late last week, that they're being installed somewhere near Embrun, I believe.
Well, oh my God, I hope not. Because I know that Doug Ford canceled many of these. But if this contract was already signed, then I guess they have decided that they just can't afford the lawsuits. I don't know. I will check into it. Thank you very much. 700, they say, near Embrun?
Uh-huh.
I'll check into that.
Good times. They're wonderful to look at. Gorgeous. Can't wait.
Well, you know what? I mean, it would be one thing. They're ugly. We've destroyed, to build the 42 wind farms, we've now destroyed over 2,000 trees to do that. And many of the new wind farms will destroy trees as well. But if they were producing anything of value, then there might be some rationale. But you talk about irrational, illogical things. This is certainly one of them. Billions of dollars for electrical power that doesn't work. Folks, I have news for you environmentalists. Sometimes the wind doesn't blow, or it doesn't blow hard enough, or it blows too hard. Okay? And if it blows too hard, if it doesn't blow hard enough, or it doesn't blow at all, then you get no power from the wind. Solar, even on bright sunny days, is producing almost nothing. I don't know why. Honest to God, I don't. I think that in itself deserves an inquiry. We've spent billions in solar panels. Who got all this money and why? And why aren't we getting any power from solar? John, we're out of time. Any more worth reading there?
No, this is a good place to end it right here, sir.
Thank you all, folks. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.